You have no idea how to do a taper fade and want to learn? Well, stick around because I'll show you.
Let's go.
In this case, with my client, we decided to use a clipper on the top, but we didn't want it too short. That's why we used a closed #6 guard comb, making sure to pass it in all directions to ensure an even cut. Some people make the mistake of rushing the clipper too fast. Starting with the taper, I use a closed blade clipper. As you can see, we're doing a high taper fade here, as we decided not to define the hairline curve. Next, I use my trimmer to taper the hair a bit, so I can easily use my shaver. I run the shaver right below the line, never going as high as with the clipper. To blend in the line, I run the shaver from top to bottom. This way, we shouldn't have any problems or issues. Then, I fully open the blade, which is at 0.5, and create my second guideline, being careful not to go up too high. We have a small area to work with, and if we go too high, the cut will be too high and lack structure. We can automatically fade this guideline with the blade halfway open. It's crucial to work with the corner of the blade, as I mentioned before, because we have limited maneuvering space for the fade. Finally, I almost fully close the lever and eliminate any remaining dark spots. To achieve a gray tone, I use the one guard comb with the blade closed. If you notice, I try to make all the guidelines the same size on the sideburns. This ensures coherence between all the shades and creates a uniform shadow, avoiding a lack of transition that sometimes occurs. Now, to blend the line between the 0.5 and the 1, we'll use the special 0.5 guard comb with the lever closed. Of course, I know you'll ask if it's possible to do it without this comb, and the answer is yes. I'll be sharing tutorials soon on how to achieve fades without special combs. To finish the sideburns, I use the 1.5 guard comb with the lever open. I extend it a bit more because it helps connect the fade with the overall cut. To blend in the new line that's formed, I run the one comb again, but this time with the lever open. Since it cuts a bit shorter than the 1.5, we won't raise it much, just on any remaining dark spots, always trying to avoid mistakes. That's why I use the corner of the comb a lot. Here, I noticed some dark spots that I couldn't eliminate, so I closed the lever halfway and finished blending them. Finally, as usual, I give it a fine polish with my texturizing shears. This eliminates any imperfections and greatly improves the fade. I highly recommend doing this step as it significantly affects the final result. Now I'll continue with the back part, which follows the same procedure as the sideburn area. So the first thing I do is mark my initial guide. As you can see, I also place my guide a bit higher on the back because I need to maintain continuity with what I did on the side. Otherwise, it would look like two different haircuts. Moving on with the process, we now use our trimmer. Remember, especially if you're a beginner, not to pass it at the same height as your clipper. While experienced individuals may find it easier to blend the line created by the trimmer with the clipper, it can be more challenging for newcomers. To finish the fade, we use our shaver. In this area, I recommend using the shaver gently. Although we should always be cautious, the nape area is more sensitive and prone to irritation. Personally, I keep the shaver 1 finger's width below the 0 line. This allows me to erase the mark with the shaver itself, using light upward strokes. It also helps when it's time to remove the hard line created by the blade, making it much easier. Now, as I start with the gray tone, I'll use the open lever on the 0 guard. I'll pass it approximately 1 finger's width. This way, I'll have enough transition space between tones for them to be clearly distinguished. Right after creating the initial guide, I'll erase it. First, I start with the 0 guard and the lever halfway. As I've mentioned in several videos, when we close the lever slightly, we can't raise our machine as high. In this case, we close the lever halfway, so we can only lift the machine halfway up the guide. If you always remember this, I assure you that your mistakes or difficulties will significantly decrease. Next, to completely blend the line, I'll almost close the lever. However, as our rule suggests, if we close the adjustment lever, we can't raise our machine as high. So now, we won't be able to raise it much. We'll limit ourselves to working only on the line, using very short movements and always with the corner of the blade. To connect the gray tone with the black tone, I'll use the number 1 guard with the lever closed. Just like on the sideburn area, we'll try to maintain the same guide height as before. If we raised it 1 finger's width with the 0.5 guard, we'll raise it 1 finger's width with the number 1 guard as well. This way, we achieve harmony between tones, To blend the line between the 0.5 guard and the number 1 guard, we'll do the same as on the sideburn area. Use the special comb with the lever halfway closed. Something I wanted to mention is that if you're not very confident or just starting out, I recommend starting this step with the lever halfway and then closing it completely. This is mainly to avoid complications because if you do it the way I'm doing it, you'll need to have good control over the scooping motion, and that takes time to master. As you can see, little by little, the fade starts taking shape, and we can see the blending between the white and gray tones. That means we're on the right track. To finish shaping the black tone, I'll use the number 1.5 guard with the lever open, just as I did on the sideburn area. I'll emphasize the scooping motion with this comb to blend the fade with the rest of the haircut. It's a technique I use a lot and it actually saves me quite a bit of time. Finally, to eliminate any remaining dark spots, I'll use the number 1 guard with the lever open, being careful not to raise it too high or go over areas unnecessarily. I'll focus solely on the dark spots I want to blend or soften. If you observe, there's still no harmonious blend between the gray and black tones because the fade looks patchy in that area. So, I'll gradually pass the clipper, making sure to use the corner of the guard. This allows me to work precisely where I want without going overboard. One advantage of using the corner of the blade, especially with variable density hair, is that it helps even out the hair and achieve a completely uniform fade. Before giving a final touch-up to the nape area, I'll mark the hairline. I do this because it helps me easily identify any errors or details that need to be fixed during the touch-up. When doing the hairline, please try to maintain the natural shape of the client's hair as much as possible. What do I mean by this? Avoid making it too sharp or pushing it too far inward. Unfortunately, many barbers try to achieve a defined look by going too deep with the hairline, both at the nape and above the ears, which ends up looking unnatural. While using the trimmer, I'll also outline the forehead. Now, we can see how the taper is coming along, and I personally really like the result. Once we've outlined the hairline, it's time for the scissor finishing. As you can see in the fade, there are some darker patches, especially in the gray and black tones. I'll start with those areas, keeping the comb slightly away from the skin. Importantly, I won't pass the scissors multiple times in the same spot. As I mentioned in a previous video, even though the textured scissors cut less, if you repeatedly go over the same spot, it can create a hole that can't be fixed later. So, be very careful with that. I also removed weight from the connection area since it appeared too disconnected from the rest of the hair, and I didn't like how it looked. Finally, with my straight razor, I'll define the hairline to ensure it stands out and there are no stray hairs. It's crucial to change the blade between each client. Remember, they are not reusable. And this is the final result. I'm personally satisfied with how clean and neat it turned out, as that's something I always pay attention to. If you found this helpful, I appreciate your comments and subscriptions. Let me know what video you'd like to see next on the channel. See you next week with a new video. Bye.
Let's go.